Well, it's time now for our roundtable session, and the moderator will be at the end of the table, Dr. Ismael Raffles from Ingenio, the Joint Research Institute of the Spanish National Research Council and the Polytechnic University of Valencia. And he's accompanied by Dr. Clara Eugenia Garcia, General Director of Research of the Ministry of Economy, Industry and Competitiveness. It's difficult to say that.
You get used to that.
Sorry?
That you might get used.
Yeah,
I
will try. Dr. Paula Adam, Head of Research Assessment of the Agency of Health Quality and Assessment of Catalonia, AQUAS, and Dr. Martí Casadesús, Director of the Catalonia University Quality Assurance Agency. Our roundtable is entitled New Models of Communication and Evaluation of Research in the European Periphery. Thank you very much.
Thank you everybody for attending. Thanks also for the many people who are in managing positions thinking about new models of evaluation and who are here to reflect together with us about where we might be going. As it was mentioned in the previous presentations, research evaluation in many countries has been dominated by bibliometric indicators in the last 2 decades. However, we have been seeing in the previous presentations that bibliometric indicators are not necessarily well aligned with many of the missions of research. They're not well aligned with teaching or with societal impact, for example. They're also problematic in terms of the new types of missions that are being given, such as thinking of responsible research and innovation or open science. Instead of looking into the different missions of science, what this conventional bibliometrics evaluation have done is they have tended to narrow communication practices instead of fostering research that is more attuned to local stakeholders or professional needs. So in line with the previous 2 presentations, what we would like this roundtable to be is, rather than looking at what we are doing and we might not be so happy about how it's working, is thinking about what we might be doing to improve current evaluations, particularly in terms of these broader communication practices, in terms of teaching, in terms of societal impact, in terms of looking at the local needs, in terms of looking at knowledge exchange with professional networks. And we are delighted to have here 3 distinguished speakers, and we'll have 15 minutes presentation, 10-15 minutes presentations from each of them, and then we'll have about half an hour of open debate. So please do take notes for having the discussion later on. We will start with the more contextualized and local and move towards the bigger. So we'll start with Paula Adam at AQUAS, then Martí Casadesús at ACU, and we'll finish with Clara Eugenia at the Ministry. So, Paula?
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Ismael, for this nice presentation. First of all, I moved here because it's easier for me to move the slides, which I'm going to open now. No, sorry.
That's mine.
Sorry. This one. Okay. So, I think it's great to be here. It's great that we are participating all together in this very, very interesting Seminari workshop. So I should thank the organizers first of all, because I think this is a great initiative. First of all, the work Alex López Burrull and Pastora Martínez being here, but also from the UB, the University of Barcelona, Ernesta Badal, and Ingenio, the organizers of this roundtable and this Seminario. But also I would like to thank the previous speakers, because because the Enlightenment, I've been going through this first part of the morning, Paul Wolters and Gunnar Sifsten. I think I learned so much this morning that I hope I will be able to walk the talk. So while talking about, in my presentation, adapt and incorporate what I learned to be able to create dialogue with you and bridges for advancing together, because this is what it's all about, this global and local interaction in science that makes better science and better world. So that's why we are all here, I think, and so let's try it. I'm going to talk, because Ismael asked me to talk about a research assessment in the periphery of Europe, and I'm going to talk about the example in Catalonia on health science. So this is the ground in which I will be talking, and what we call responsible assessment, okay? First of all, as presentation, thanks for the presentation I had before, but I wanted to introduce myself in a different way because that will explain you the relevance or not of what I'm saying, okay? I should say I'm a public employee of the Ministry of Health of the government. So my end goal, mine and the team we are working together, is to help research to improve health. This is what every morning we think of, the team of Aquas. And so we started locally back in 2010, promoting research with the money of the Department of Health, not the money from the hospitals, okay? So on the bottom of this line is our work, local work, and on the top of this graph is how we realized early in 2010 that we needed a global interaction in order to be locally relevant, and vice versa, to be local relevant in order to be globally interesting somehow, because this is what could be our value added. So doing a research impact assessment, which is what we worked on back in 2010, we realized that it was not effective unless we needed more, we seek for orientation and advocacy elsewhere. So that's where we collaborated in the co-foundation of the International School on Research Impact Assessment, which is a school of practitioners, so program managers, research universities, or any actors on the research system that work together for 5 years in different continents in understanding an effective process of research impact assessment. And by effective, I mean that it is useful and it is oriented to needs. So really, the assessment oriented to what you want, why you assess, and how to make it happen, okay? And so we did this internationally, so it was in English, also because lots of Anglo-Saxon countries were interested in it more than in other countries. But we tried to have local schools as well, in Spanish in Latin America, in Arabic in Middle East, and hopefully soon we are in talks to do it in Catalan in the next months, okay? So that's where my learning comes from, and so the grounds are, that's the other thing, I work for the Ministry of Health, so impact is my word every morning and the word of everybody in the team in Aqua. So I was really shocked when you, Paul, said impact doesn't exist, because I thought, how can this be? I mean, every day we wake up thinking about impact. So at least it is in our minds. So maybe impact is something that is in the minds of people, but as long as it's in the minds, it helps you work towards the direction. So perhaps it's a point you want to address, okay? So, and this is how in funding and assessing research programs, everything we do, our end goal is impact. So anything we do is because we want to enhance the impact, okay? So we think impact backwards, okay? All right? Okay, so it's absolutely mission-oriented. We work because we have a mission, which is improve health, or any improve health in general terms, but any anything that can influence better health. So it's absolutely contextualized, and we are everything in this game. It's not passive, it has to have an active role. Okay? So this is, many of you have seen this is just a logic model of how science works. Very simple. I'm sure we can criticize this, but just to set where I'm, when I say I'm in the side of the impact in terms of my way of thinking. Research, you have inputs. I'm not going to go into detail, process and outputs, and very much and very often the discussion is on how this left-hand side, can be improved. And we can do it better. How we can shape this, what we call in our impact world, what we call the academic dimension. How we improve this. But there is what I call the wider society, which is where we see the impact, in the outcomes and the impacts. This is very simple scheme. Health can be approached in very different levels. So we try to think from health backwards, okay? Now, too often, the discussion is in the academic side, and I know the audience here is universities, so I understand that it makes sense. But if we are mission-oriented, we have to understand, understand what are our strategic plans. Universities can have very different strategies or aims. Global, advancing global knowledge, advancing local impact, advancing, So strategy matters a lot when you measure, because universities and different countries, a small country, a big country can have different goals. I understand that the universities in the United States have specific missions that are very global, but maybe not all of them. And but going back to health, I have the example that I always tell about the biomedical research in Canada. The Parliament decided that 70% of the biomedical research in Canada had to impact on Canadians' population. That was the strategy. And the other 30% had to be blue sky. So there, if this is the strategy, then we have to find indicators for the 30% in the academia, how to advance global knowledge, but also we have to find indicators to be accountable for the other 70%. This is a Canadian strategy. Another country can have another strategy. Of course, multilingual countries, this is more complex, because in this strategy you have to understand the context. Okay? So why I worry about impact and why I think it's important that we say impact exists, because it's, we say a zanahoria in Spanish or pastanaga in Catalan is something we have to be heading. We have defined strategies, we have to be accountable for these defined strategies. Otherwise, why we write down strategies? If we say all the strategies I've seen in universities, etc., they say they want a university that is relevant for society. Okay, so let's be accountable on this. So other reasons about impact. I put different colors because I group them, but you could group it differently. There is a social contract between science and society. It's a public investment, so there must be a return. Accountability and co-responsibility. Not only science is co-responsible for a better world. So this is a question of co-responsibility. There is also a question of advocacy. We have to demonstrate because we are being asked, because society is asking why science is important. So we have to advocate, we have to legitimate science, we have to combat post-truth. We have to make sure that science is in society and in the debates that transform society. Improve the way science works, improve the way we design policies. In health, we say evidence-based health policy. We should also talk about evidence-based scientific policy. We have to have evidence to better shape policy, scientific policy, okay, to optimize our strategies, okay? Increase the value, contribute for a better world, okay? Now, so no, it doesn't make sense to make scientific policy and a health policy separate in my context. What it makes sense is a research that is in the health and the society and the health system that transforms the health, but also that the health system transforms the way we do research, and backwards, the research transforms society. So it's a back and forth, okay? People, health systems, and scientific systems shape each other. That's the thing, okay? And there is much room for improvement in the way we fund research, okay? 5 minutes, sorry. I will go directly then to how we shaped our program, okay? But let me first say that assessment can be a player in transforming. I'm talking about transformation, okay? So I will skip the... So how can assessment, this is what I'm going to talk about. Since I have 5 minutes, I'm going to ask the moderator, do you want that I go back down to the Catalan program, or that I explain a little bit more on the yeah, okay, I will go to the, just to mention that the assessment purposes is very important, because this is what shapes how you define whether it's indicators or whether it's qualitative assessment or a mix or methods. We, in this international school, we define the 4 A's, which is advocacy, analysis, and analysis can be to understand or to improve. Accountability, and here is where I see a lot of relevance on the periphery, because accountability, depending on your cultural context, it can be more of a control, or a regulation, or a monitoring, or a question of transparency. And then allocation, okay? So now I will move to this example which is the Catalan health plan has integrated a health research plan within the health plan, and within the health research plan has integrated a system of assessment, okay? So it's all embedded into one big plan. Periphery and contextuality. Usually in big countries, the assessment of a program like this would be in a big assessment organization. In our case, because we are a small country and we're very contextualized, we are embedded in one organization, the assessment of the health system and the health research system. So one talks to another, okay? And the programs are talent, so we fund careers of scientists, but also intensification of practitioners, medical doctors or nurses that want to spend the time doing research. Okay, so we take practitioners into research, but then they go back to, okay, to after this intensification. And then programs of thematic programs like mental health or primary care. Okay, so how the assessment model can improve, this is called PERIS, this program, so what we want is that the PERIS is enhanced in a better impact on health with the assessment, okay? So our objectives are transparency, not control, not filling more forms of assessment, but just transparency, how the use of the resources. But also, the objectives of this program is to improve health through learning and engagement. By engagement, what we mean is, instead of controlling or assessing regularly the beneficiaries of the research, is we engage them in the impact pathway. And how we do that is by defining all together with workshops how and with the assessors how what is impact, why it is important that collectively they hit impact, and then define all together how they want to be measured at the end of the program for the impact. So it really doesn't matter when the program is going to be finished how we measure it, because the important is is to walk the way. So the important is the process. Okay? Sorry. Yeah, 2 minutes? Okay. So we have 3 pillars. I'm not going to go into details, but the accountability pillar, we have the Central de Resultados, maybe some of you have heard of. Analysis, we analyze the system to understand where disruptions or dysfunctions that can improve during the program the way we fund it, and disengagement, which is the most important part, okay? And of course, we have a very target audience because we don't want an engagement that is a theater, because we don't want this to be just a tick in a form. We want engagement for making science in a different way, okay? So here is just an example of the ex-ante assessment. This is something that is the administration, the public administration. Ya está, okay. And just showing you that there is a share of the ex-ante that relates to impact. So that's why we engage the ex-ante assessment professionals with the impact, because they are assessing it, okay? And so that's why we call it responsible assessment, because it involves co-responsibility, contextualization, a social contract, and improvement and transformation. That's what we're heading, transparency, and the walk the talk that I'm talking. Okay, so thank you very much.
Apologies for pressing, but I thought it's really good having opportunities to discuss later on. I found very interesting some of your work seems to be aligned with what Paul Wouters was calling evaluative inquiry, experiments of engagement, of how users think about evaluation and indicators. So just wanted to mention this shared point. So now we have Martí Casadesús, who is the director of ACU. ACU is the Catalan Agency of Research Assessment, or Research Quality.
Sorry. Thank you very much. I would like just to say it's a pleasure for me to be here again. Thank you to the UOC and University of Barcelona for inviting ACU Catalonia to participate in this forum. I will try to be very, very fast. I have a lot of slides, but the moderator is very tough, so I will try to go very fast. First of all, I just want to explain basically what we do related to research, which are the principles that you use for that, and which are our challenge in the short term, something that we are already done, and in the future in this field. I will talk just about one program. This is a teaching staff assessment in Spain, and we are the agency for evaluation, accreditation, and certification of quality in the field of Catalonia, in the field of universities in higher education in Catalonia. Part of our work is evaluating programs, and one of the part is evaluating the research of teaching staff. This is by law. And basically, we have these accreditations in order to be lecturer, to be associate professor, or to be full professor. This is quite strange in Europe. This doesn't exist in Spain or in Catalonia. And in order to, the majority of you know, but in order to become a professor, you need some of these accreditations. Then I will just focus my talk in this part. And this is just an accreditation that guarantees a minimum level for each figure, because we understand that it's the university who will hire finally the professor. It's individual, it's not face-to-face, it's secondary. It's just for Catalonia in this case, and we have a lot of commissions that basically it's for experts who are doing a peer review, who are reviewing all the curriculums. Our main goal is the consistency and to get a good evaluation, and so basically it's to having good experts. We make 2 annual calls, and just to have one idea, we are now in one of these calls, and we receive around more than 1,200 applications. So I don't know where all these people coming from, but there is a lot of people applying for these evaluations. Basically, what is important to understand is in Catalonia we don't have any other rule about that. So the rule of the government says you have to evaluate the research. That's all. For lectures, for associate professors, and for full professors. Then all the criteria, everything is depending exclusively from our agency. We don't have to publish, well, it has to be published in our website, but we can change the criteria one day after the other if we want. So all the criteria depends of us, and all the problems depend of us. That's true. If there's something wrong, it's because of us. It's not because anything else than us. We're following basically some principles. The main one is clearly the European standards and guidelines. That's the standards that evaluate all the agencies. They are recognized in Europe. These are standards just for evaluating programs, but we are trying, because this work evaluating professors is not usual in Europe, but we're trying to follow basically the same standards for evaluation of teaching. So, and what is really, really important is to be independent. We are totally independent. No part of the government related to the agency. All about academic experts, and all it has to be public. So all the criteria, they are there, and we are trying to improve every single day the information about that. Then we have other principles or other things that we try to follow, and I would like to thank the professors Butters and Raffles, because I think that this principle that they were talking before, that they have been published in this journal. I think that at least you know that somebody has read it, and you know that we are trying to follow that. So I will not repeat, but I will. These 10 principles, and I think that we are in green, some of them that we are clearly aligned with that, and in red some others that we are not aligning with that, and in yellow the ones that, this is just my opinion, that we are trying to improve. For instance, it's not aligned. We are not evaluating the research of each professor against the research mission of the institution. Here in this case, every professor can do any research that he has to do it by himself. But we are trying to evaluate the research that's locally relevant research. So this is included in many of the criteria, but depending on the area, because we have different criteria for different areas, of course. The quality. You have a qualitative judgment because you have some peer reviewers process, but in fact it's a lot of quantitative, because we're basic in many articles that have been published and so on. And we try to, for instance, the last one, to scrutinize the indicators and update them. We are changing that very slow, but we're trying to adapt and to use some kind of tools to measure better all the indicators. It's clear that in some areas it's quite easy. It's clear that in some others it's very difficult. I will show something about that. And then we have many meetings, and for instance, there is one in 2010 about the research in humanities and social science, and in this case we found a decalogue, 10 objectives that ACU has to follow, and we tried to follow this objective. The first one we couldn't do it. It's a kind of mixed evaluation system. It's really impossible, because I told you before, we have 1,200 this call. We'll have 1,200 more next call. So it's very difficult to follow in this objective. But we are working in order to avoid any prejudice to the language. So we talked before. We are introducing the role of the book, the monograph, the chapters, that it was not 5-6 years ago. We have a criteria for the academic, for the quality of the universities, or where the people have been published for the journals that they are not in this database. We didn't include yet anything about knowledge transfer. In fact, we have one program for that, but it's not really relevant. We tried that all the procedures is very transparent and very clear. For instance, now we have an appeals committee totally independent of our process of evaluation. So if you get an evaluation and you fail, you can always go to the appeals committee, where other two experts, or two different experts, will evaluate again your curriculum. Then if you fail again, it means that 4 experts say that you failed, so you have to think about that. all the evaluators, they are from the same discipline. We always have 2 or 3. It depends of which one. And we are trying to improve. This is it's quite hard, but slowly we are trying to improve the motivation when people fail. Well, when people pass, it doesn't care the motivation. We say, yes, you are right. But if not, we have to improve this. Then we try to get a better coordination between agencies in Spain, but nowhere else was with that. So our evaluations, they are independent from their evaluations in the rest of agencies in Spain. Very quickly, short-term challenge that we are doing. First of all, we are in all the criteria we include, we are underline the importance of quality versus quantity. This is the actual president of our commission, is Luis Tourné. It's always focusing on that. So it's not an evaluation of having numbers of 10 articles, 12 or 13. You can pass the same evaluation with 2 articles if they are good or with a good project. So it's always quality. This is more difficult for evaluating, but it's always quality more than quantity. For instance, we are trying to adapt or at least to protect the excellence in the locally relevant research. For instance, law is one of the places one of the areas where we have more problems, but we are defining better because they are not on the database. You cannot find any journal of law in the Scopus, for instance. We are trying to define better how we will evaluate this program, but it's always difficult. Now we have a very good collaboration with CSUC we're connecting our database to the PRC, that's the Portal de Recerca de Catalunya, the website for Catalan research. So now in one of our programs, if the information is on the university, the university sends information to the Portal de Recerca de Catalunya, and then we take it directly. So basically the people who apply say, okay, I will apply for 2000 to 2016, then they go to the website, they see all the articles they have been published from 2000 to 2016, and they can choose which ones they will apply, and then could complement with other articles or conference or other process. So we are trying that, and this is linked to the index impact too. So, and they directly shows the impact factor. So we are trying to, at least the information that's on the websites on the universities, well, the system of the universities and the Portal de Recerca de Catalunya is uploaded directly in order to go faster. Faster for the applicant, it's really important, but more consistent for the people who has to review, because it's sure that this article has been published and it's sure that the impact index is there. Then we will publish very quickly the profile of the people who has approved. For instance, this is just general. I would like to publish on the website the people in media, the people who approve for be an associate professor. They have 5 articles or 6 or whatever, in order to get a better idea to the applicants, and in order to avoid evaluating people who will fail for sure. So this is important for us. Other improvements less important, but I would like to finish because I think I'm in time. I try to go very fast, but then it's with something for the future. And we have been working during 2015 with evaluation of the receipts of the departments. I think it's really important that this is something the professor have been talking about that before at the beginning, that it's doing many places in Europe, not here. And it's relevant that now the research is not something individual, it's something that is done together with a research group. And in fact, the departments finally is the, let's say, at least in Spain, the part of the university who hire new people, basically, who has this possibility. So we think that is necessary, and the vice rector of the University of Barcelona talks about that at the beginning, that it's necessary to evaluate the departments, and we have been working on that. In 2015, we do a pilot project in one of the universities of Catalonia, where we evaluate 8 departments with an internal and external evaluation with international committees. This is, I think it was quite good. using indicators of productivity, impact, and excellence. And now in 2016, we approved the guide. The guide is already approved, the guidelines. You can download from our website. And soon we'll start with other evaluations. In fact, we are planning one in another university. And it's a guide quite similar to a protocol for research assessment in the Netherlands and the one that in the University of Lund in Sweden. It's quite similar. We have made some changes. In this case, we have some standards. One is about research productivity, so if you research a lot. Second, research quality, if you do a lot, but in fact they are good, whatever you research. And the third one is about research significant. It's related to the one that Paula was talking now about, which is the impact of that. In the individual evaluation for professors, we didn't have these standards. We didn't evaluate that. Maybe we have to do it. We can change that. But now we are introducing in the standards for the evaluation of the departments, and then the vitality and organization of the capacity. Finally, these evaluations for internal for external expert, basically what it's an evaluation for improving. Basically what we're looking for is to make sure to get some good practices and to make some recommendations for improving. The department get a grading scale, they get a logo finally, that could be excellent, very good, good or poor. Well, if they are poor, we don't have logo, we haven't designed for them, but for the excellent and for the very good, we have. But it's not just about that, it's just about the importance of the continuous improvement of the department. We are aligned with the government of Catalonia, who would like to do something. It's going to be a call related to that with some evaluation. But in fact, we are not. We are able to evaluate if somebody pays for that. So basically, we cannot evaluate all the departments of Catalonia right now because there are more or less 400 departments. So and this is a high cost, and we are just having this tool for any department that would like to do it. This is the objective, and this is what I think that is going to be the evaluation in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I am really glad to see that things are evolving, that there is now this introduction of department level evaluation, which wasn't before. So we'll move now to Clara Eugenia Garcia, Director General of the Directorate of Science, Technology and Innovation Policy of the Ministry of Economy.
Thank you. Thank you, Ismael. Good morning. And thank you very much for inviting me. It's my pleasure to be here. And I feel fortunate, even if I have to wake up this morning at 4 o'clock to get the plane. So no, but really thank you to the organizers, because I think this is a very nice workshop. The topics are very interesting, and I hope at the end of the day we will be able to summarize and to get some very clear conclusions. My talk will be a little bit different from previous presentations, because I'm not going to talk about what we do at the level of the ministry. I'm not the person in charge of organizing the evaluation process in the Spanish Ministry for Research or for Education or whatever. I'm in charge of thinking how to solve and overcome some of the problems that we already have, and how to think in the future. So we have to be continuous thinking ahead of, just to fit up the policies and just to contribute to have better policies. That's what we do. But what I would like also is to provide you with some of my credentials, who I am, and why I might conclude or might present some of the ideas that I would like to discuss with you today. So, first of all, I'm a professor of the University Carlos III. So I know quite well how young universities in Spain, they were organized. The incentives they provide to create a kind of so-called tenure track in a country in which there is not such a thing. And secondly, when I moved to the ministry, I was in charge of the definition and the management of the Severo Ochoa and María de Maeztu program from the very beginning, when we started with a screen with nothing in there till the program was more or less consolidated. The Severo Ochoa program and María de Maeztu for universities is what we call the program for centers and units of excellence in Spain, okay? I don't want to compare, I don't want to discuss here about levels of funding. I think it's very difficult just to talk about this initiative in the context of other initiatives in France or Germany related to excellence, but I think that if I quote some of the beneficiaries of the Severo Ochoa program, the director of the IRB, one of the institutes, he told me that the Severo Ochoa has been a policy experiment and is a successful policy experiment. And since I was the person in charge of that, I can tell you that the success of that policy experiment was the evaluation. And it was not only about the process, it was not only the fact, I have a presentation here on that, sorry. It was not only that the whole program was evaluated by an international committee, all international, all very distant from the reality of those centers. But the whole evaluation was very distinct, very different in the Severo Ochoa than in other regular activities funded by the agency. I was just trying to put together and to summarize my experience, and I will say that the three characteristics that really contributed to the success of the program were: first, it was performance-based funding. That is very important. And it's very important for that, how you define the criteria for evaluation. The second characteristic and the second trait was that, as I already said, it was international. It was an international research assessment. I will not say it was an evaluation, because what we have is these panels of international peers from China, Korea, the States, and Europe, all together in Madrid for a week. We do also this cross-panel comparison, okay? And they were discussing about quality. They have numbers, but they really do a research assessment of the proposals and against very, I will say, robust criteria. And the third characteristic is that what we do is institutional evaluation, not individual. And this is something that is important in the context of Spain. I think, as the Vice Rector recalled this morning, the whole evaluation process in Spain started 35 years ago. And we have to start that from scratch, because the practice of research was totally different. So research in universities was almost inexistent. And the people and professors and full professors, they were used to do whatever they want. And nobody was asking them for their outcomes to be accountable and so on. So the evaluation system is quite young, started 40 years ago, out of a culture that has to create the right set of incentives. In that sense, I would say, Professor, that, because you mentioned that several times, that the sexennium was a very successful experiment, policy experiment at that time, to create the system from scratch, because it provides the incentive for individuals to start doing research according to some international standards, but as in policy, in research policy, as in any other area, we need innovation. We might need to innovate, to introduce new practices, because what was really very good for years, the promotion of research 4 decades ago might be right now very harmful for the promotion of young researchers. Okay, so that's the question. But I think that just doing institutional versus individual evaluation was important. And notice that I put recognition, because evaluation is not only evaluation, it's about the recognition, it's about the reputation. When we do individual evaluation, we create reputation. And when we are practicing institutional evaluation, we are also creating reputation. And this is, to me, is very important. And there is a lot of things to discuss how individual researchers and institutions, they might obtain some, I'm an economist, I'm sorry, I will say, how they obtain reputational rents out of evaluation outcomes. Just also to summarize, maybe they might sound very nice to you, but these 3 characteristics, they represent a significant departure from the conventional practice of evaluation research. Okay, so maybe okay. So I was already, is that what? Introducing the 3rd one, okay? Yes, in terms of the lessons, this is what I learned from the Severo Ochoa in the way we address the problem and the management of the program. Now, looking backwards, and it has been a year since I'm not anymore involved in the program, what I can tell you, I would like to share with you, because I think it's very pertinent to some of the issues that they were discussed this morning. The first question is that even if I was running a program so-called of excellence, excellence is a multidimensional construct. And I would say, I fully agree. I think we refer to the same things, but with different words. Professor Wouters this morning refers to different audience of research. Excellence and the way we measure excellence in our program really reflects the different audience of good research. The second thing concerning excellence is that since it is multidimensional, it cannot be captured by, I put bibliometric indicators, cannot be captured by any single metric. That's for sure. That's why the balance between qualitative and quantitative is very good. I already mentioned the strong link between research evaluation and reputation. And since I don't know really how these 2 things are related, but I can tell you that are strongly related until I was not able really to understand how they relate to one to each other. I think it's very important if we want to succeed in proposing new alternative evaluation methods, metrics, processes, whatever, yes, to think always how our alternative models, they will contribute to create reputation, the good one, and to recognize those parts. And the last thing that I learned, maybe because by running and conducting evaluation in this way, I have to fight against what was conventionally done in the past. What I learned is that our scientists, our researchers, the vast majority, they feel very comfortable with the models and the way we evaluate. They love the indicators. They love just to press the button and to see what is the impact factor. And they have preferences. They have their own personal journals in which they want to publish. So if they go to the ministry and they say that we are not following the same sample mechanisms in which they feel comfortable, we have problems, okay? And this is also, that's my experiment, Professor Wouters. So, and this is very important. We might be here discussing about very nice things. We might have great ideas on how to change the system, but we need also the support and the legitimacy from the whole community, from researchers themselves. Because at least in Spain, what is also funny is that concerning evaluation, 3 minutes. Concerning evaluation, a lot of people, they complain that evaluation is done by the ministry. No, evaluation is done by peers. The ministry and the agency now, the funding agency, what the only thing that it does is just distribute. It gets the grants and just distributes. So we need the consensus, we need the support from the scientific community, and this is important. When I was talking about we might change, we have to talk about new models, but I fully agree with Professor Wouters. We have to be very conscious and very cautious, because what we are doing in terms of evaluation, it has a consequence in the career of young researchers. The same way that doing the things how we do right now, they're also shaping and affecting, and they also have a consequence in the professional career of our young researchers. Whatever we will do in the future, it will have a strong influence. And I want just to finish, because I suppose that we can discuss later on different aspects, is that the new models of research assessment, research evaluation, they require action. I'm here today to call for action. It's very nice, the discussion. It's very nice to do the science of the evaluation of science, discussions, seminars, even papers, because they will come papers out of this kind of discussions. All that is good, it's nice, but we need action. And for action, what we need is a greater openness and flexibility in our institutions, including funding agencies, ministries, the regional ministries, the universities, whatever. We need flexibility and openness. Also, flexibility for the scientific, from the scientific community. We need new standards governing the allocation of resources. And the metrics and the indicators, I'm not just saying that we need specific indicators, this or that, 1 minute, but we need the standards. We cannot just live in a world of allocating resources without standards, whatever they will be, standards. And that is important also, that the new standards that might emerge, they have to govern also the merits of researchers and scientists. So they have to serve for the allocation of resources, for funding research, and also for the definition of new scientific careers. And I have 2 more things to say, but the time is over now, Mr. Chairman.
You can say them very briefly, and then we pass.
Okay. Changing the evaluation is a win-win strategy for all of us. And what I was just taking notes. We are referring to a lot of things, maybe from a different perspective. We need more dialogue. There are new things on top of the table concerning research, the way research is done, and the way science will be organized in the future. We are talking about open science, open access. We are talking about mission-oriented. We are talking about social engagement, citizen science, research, RIA, all that is very important. I will not say that is totally new, because after your talk, maybe it's not new, but what is true is that those are things that are all together right now on top of the table, that we have to do a new research policy out of these kind of things, because the policy in which we base our actions is the policy from a different era, and that if we do that, we are in a win-win strategy for the research funders and governments, for the scientific community, for society as a whole. It's not easy, but here we are. Thank you.
Well, I'm sort of encouraged by the speakers in seeing that there are first already change in place, which I was not aware that it was happening at this level, and also I was encouraged by the call for action by the Director General, which means that your ideas can actually have an influence in where this action is going. So we are opening the floor for people not just to discuss, but actually to throw ideas that can help us in moving towards action. Who goes first? Well, if there is nobody ready,
Nobody wants to act.
we have a
Fernando.
over there. So meanwhile, let me ask you quickly the question of the current indicators being a protected space by the current scientific elite. You were suggesting that we have to negotiate changes with that scientific elite because they're not going to allow new evaluation models that might threaten them. How do you see this process of change in which the scientific elite will have to accept new models of evaluation?
It's going to be very tough here in this country, in particular in this country. And I have colleagues and they say the same. It's the same in different countries. How we can do that? Well, by creating more incentives to young people, for young people. So if we cannot convince the elite, in particular because they are from a different generation. But the question is to introduce additional incentives for young people and to recognize these new ways of doing research and distributing research. I would like to mention one thing, and please don't quote that, because you know that I have a meeting with part of that elite and the Ministry of Education and Culture concerning also how to change the old practice in the accreditation system and the sexennial that only measures the metrics and so on. And after long meetings, we more or less agree that the change is needed and that it is time for change. But you know what is the main problem? The trade unions. Now, the representatives of the unions that are part of this kind of committees, they don't trust other method, but only the pure indicator and the metrics that come from some external source. This is something, it might be anecdotic, but the history behind, what is really behind that kind of position is that evaluation is about trust. What we do is about trust. It's about creating trust and confidence. And it's really, it's amazing. The story is really kind of sad, but it's very important. This is also why I call your attention on the difficulties when you go to implement nice ideas.
Move to the question, okay?
Yeah, Fernando Rejas from Universitat Politècnica Catalunya. Actually, what I was going to say in a different way, it has just been said by Clara. So I think that action is needed because, as she said, the resistance is going to be quite hard if we want to change the evaluation model. And one reason is, as she said, first, that people that lives in a comfort area would like to continue like that. And the other, which is related to what you have just said, is, but I wouldn't put it on the trade union side, is that in general, I think in Latin countries, there is this view that all kinds of evaluation, academic or any, should be objective. And subjective evaluation is in general suspicious. And this, for fine-grained evaluation, for not fine-grained evaluation, so if you want to do a not very detailed evaluation, indicators are okay, but for fine-grained evaluation of people or institutions, like in the case of the Maria Maestu, or you need some kind of peer review, where peers do some evaluation. They are based obviously on indicators, but they also do an evaluation that is based on the knowledge of the field that they are evaluating.
Would anybody like to comment briefly on this intervention? Otherwise, we move to Gunnar here. Question here. Are there other comments? Can't see it. So we start with Gunnar, and then...
Yes, thank you all three of you for opening up in such a nice way for a new kind of discussion. I think to change, it's important that you have indicated that you move from individual level to organizational level. Then you can ask other questions. You can relate it to the purpose of the organization. You can learn as an organization from the evaluation. So that's a kind of giant step in itself, because it has been very individual focused evaluation. And then outside of research policy, there are other issues like grand challenges and societal needs related to research that have come up during a few decades now. So it's not possible anymore to just think of bibliometric indicators that they should guide policy. So evaluations can now relate to other discussions in society about what research should do. So that is also helping a kind of change. And then I think, and that was what I tried to say, that we also need a kind of broader basis for the kind of information and indicators that go into the evaluation, because it has been now so much steered by a few indicators based on certain data that we all know of. So, and this change cannot happen without government intervention and collaboration among universities, because the commercial providers do not lead us in that direction. And then I just want to make one example of what I was saying now. It's the example of what we call the health monitor, because, and this is related to Paula's. So it is so important that health research is funded not only by Ministry of Science and Education, but also by Ministry of Health. And this stream of funding will then be related to health priorities and health goals and the aims of health research in the hospitals and in the health sector. And in Norway, through the discussion of this, we created something we call the Health Monitor, which is we combine research activity statistics with health statistics, and we confront them. And so it is, you know, it's the societal needs and it's the research activity in the same coupling of indicators. And that creates new discussions about prioritization of research.
Taula, and then.
Yeah, very briefly.
I would be very interested in this health monitor project, and just to say that in this Paris, what we are trying to do is actually, since Aquas is an agency that assesses the health system and the health research, that we are trying to, with Ismael and the Aquas team, to create a dialogue where the big data on health from the health system is informing about the needs, the knowledge gap that is in the system, and then try to match this, inform the assessment panels for the peer review or the reviewers about these needs, together with data from the WHO about the population burden for diseases, etc. So we are trying to create this dialogue so we can measure the orientation to impact when we fund research.
I would like just to add a few words. First of all, that I will not relate the funding stream to the monitor of the results and impact. So funding can come from different sources. It doesn't really matter. From Horizon 2020, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Agriculture, whatever. I will never refer to that. But it's also true that for just making the funding stream something neutral in terms of the outcome and just to monitor all those effects, we need a robust information system. Flexible and modern. We are building that system. Today I saw Alba, I don't know what is she now there. So she knows very well that we are working together with the 17 autonomous regions, 17 regional systems in Spain, and we are advancing and creating, building this CRIS. We will have a CRIS. And we will have a CRIS, but we are building a CRIS together with a new tool for the mapping of knowledge. We are doing, and I showed Ismael this morning, we are mapping the knowledge of our grants, all the grants that we are funding. At the moment we are doing that at the state level. We want to extend our mapping tool, because our mapping tool is based on natural language processing and topic modeling. So we are mapping the grants, and that will be integrated also in the CRIS, a CRIS that also relates to CVs and so on. And I think that's the way of really doing and monitoring and having different types of information for conducting research assessment.
Good. So we had a question at the back.
Thank you so much. Just 2 points and 1 question. 1 point. One of the most difficult things when you are doing research is how to have your young professionals going on. How do we encourage our young professionals when the only contracts they are being offered are part-time, precarious, and particularly and that's the worst of it, because they can suffer that. But what they cannot suffer is the fact that because of they are precarious and part-time, they could not be included in the official call for grants. So that's a very, very heavy problem, very, very difficult, high step difficulty for our young professionals. Second point, I'm sorry, but belonging to a trade union, I beg to discrepate. I have to show my discrepation with you. The problem with the evaluation was not the fact of being evaluation, but the differences in the level of evaluation between the old plan and the new plan. That was the main problem. Years before, we were asked to do an X level, and now the level has decuplicated for obtaining exactly the same recognition. So it's a little bit difficult to step. The scientists not only seek reputation and recognition, we would like to receive some respect. Professor Casadesús was with me in Oslo when the president of the ENGUA at the time told us, as the first phrase of his presentation, we, in Norway, respect very much our scientists. And I thought, maybe I will move to Norway. So, my question is, we are going from summative assessment to formative assessment. And that I think it's perfect. What are the remediation measurements? Where is the crisis group to help the groups or the institutions or the investigators that do not arrive to those high level of performance? When you evaluate someone and you say you have not passed the level, you have to propose this person an alternative, a solution, a help. Where is the help unit? Where is the remediation group? Thank you.
Martí, would you?
Yes, I'm not sure if I understand your question, but it's clear that it's a clearly problem with the evaluations, and the result of these evaluations. What we try to do is to be, our main goal is to be very, very consistent. This is our main goal. But there's a problem with the people who get these accreditations. For example, as a media, I think Esteban will know better, but to be a lecturer, to be the accreditation of lecture is 32 years. I think it's quite a lot. It's quite a lot. And I would like to say that all of us, we are responsible. The agency, but the university, the system. It's not quite normal that to be a full professor, to get accreditation, it's around 45 years, something like that. And then you have to hire, and you become a professor when you are, I don't know. But it's a problem of the system. I think there's a problem. It's not only the agency, that it's part of the system. We are trying to solve that, changing our commissions, because for law, our commissions has to be people with 4 sexennios. That was the old law. Now we changed the law in 2015. Now it could be people with 3 sexennios or any other research, important research on ICREA, something like that. So we're trying to have younger people with younger perspective in all our commissions in order to get better evaluations. But don't forget that our evaluations is binary, is yes or not, nothing else than that. And it's only research. We are not hiring anybody. We are just having one level and the university will choose with these people. That's why we don't evaluate the teaching, or we don't evaluate any other issues. We just evaluate. We say, okay, this is okay. There is a minimum, but the university has to choose as the responsibility for the people who will have. Additionally to that, I hope that someday this process, I don't know when, but this process will disappear because it has to be the university who will hire the people, like all the universities in Europe. I think that this process has been really good until now. It has been a good job, but I don't think that is the future. So the future, how I see it, is just to accreditate departments who will at the same time accreditate the people who hire. So for instance, one department that during the last 10 years only hire people with a very good curricula, why do I have to evaluate one by one the next people? It doesn't have any sense. I prefer to evaluate the department and say, or institutional evaluation, say they have a good system for hiring people, and they are the responsible, and they have the responsible. I think that it will arrive, and in our, not the board, in our consejo asesor, I'm sure, I don't. Yeah, the advisory, yeah, where there are two people from the two main union trades in Catalonia. We are developing one model for this. I will not probably be the director of the agency when this is done, but we are thinking on that. I think that we have to change that.
Just a minute. Going to the question of the criteria for sexennials, I wonder whether, besides the criteria, the very sexennial system should not be questioned. Can it be discontinued? Does it make sense to discontinue such an assessment procedure?
Don't be so provocative. No, I want really thank you for your questions and your comment. When I make my comment, I really apologize if you feel that I was I say that as something anecdotic, but with the main purpose of making clear that very often there are other social actors. In that case, they were the unions and the union representatives, other social actors, that they have also to be involved. This is nothing that is going to be solved alone by discussing that among researchers, or just by discussing that bilaterally between two different groups. It has to be based on a broader consensus because, for instance, some other social actors, they might, for different reasons that I don't judge, they are also players in this arena. This is what I want to say. On the issue, I fully agree with you. I think that this is a shared responsibility between different actors and at the institutional level. And at some moment, individual evaluation has to be done by universities, the Council for Research, whatever, at that level. We cannot just continue doing individual evaluation. And last point, about the sexennial, okay? I would say that the sexennial is supported by the elite because they control the way they reproduce themselves. That's my personal opinion. Please, this is not the ministry opinion, okay?
Yeah, Pastor Martinez from the Open University of Catalonia. So thank you very much for this roundtable. I have lots of ideas in my mind, but as I was very much challenged by the call for actions, so let me stress on that. I think we are, well, I suppose that most of us agree that if we are discussing about open science and or RRI or whatever, is the real discussion is how can we do things better? I mean, our research, and because it has a lot to do with research integrity, research legitimacy, all those points that are very on the discussion today. So going back to the call for action, I think that we are discussing it at very different levels. And in fact, the workshop here today is a good example of how researchers are organizing themselves in order to start pushing for that. Because this workshop was not organized by the institution, but by different professors that are interested, and as you can see, there's a very big audience today here with us. So the point is interesting for the researchers at the researcher point of view, and I think we are trying to push for that. And now, representing a university or an institution, we are also trying to change things and incorporate those things. But we feel that we are very much stuck. We are like a sandwich between researchers and not just elite researchers, but also, and founders and regulators. So, as a regulator, I think that, well, my question would be, are you planning for another other ways to push into this direction of the open science, and not just with experiments like the Severo Ochoa or María de Maeztu, but we have other, you have other instruments like the Plan Estatal de Investigación y Innovación that now is running, and it is true that there's an objective there calling for open and responsible science. But then when you go and to look into the objective, the only objective, as far as I know, that is there is the percentage of publication on open access journals. Well, maybe I'm wrong. So my question is the Spanish government trying to push in towards the open science, responsible research in that sense? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pastora. I'm glad to make this question. You asked this because I have the answer, okay? Yes, we are pushing in that direction. So the plan is a plan. It's a kind of very general framework, okay? And we think that it was important even in that kind of general framework, yes, to make very clear that we are committed with open science and open innovation, that we will start step by step, because that is creating a lot of controversies, because through the public consultation you cannot imagine the kind of comments that we got against open access, in particular to research data. So there are communities that are really against that. We have a real problem with forms because and how we deal with open access to research data in those projects that is part of our policy also, that we want to promote, that are public-private partnerships. That's a real problem, okay, how to deal with that. But even in that case, we go for open. So as far as is part of my duties, what we call órdenes de base, so the general legal framework in which part of the call takes place, the context of the call is already written, the full article on open research data, on how to publish on the requirements of the data management plan, and so on and so on. We are also working in the creation of the proper infrastructures to support this data, and step by step. So we are really committed on that. It's difficult. It's difficult because our scientific community is very heterogeneous, and we have part of two, three, some scientific communities. I was just discussing that with Dean this morning. In Spain, there are very advanced well, so, in terms of this open culture, but on average, we are a little bit behind others. And the second question that I would like to stress is about the commitment with what we call RRI, which is also in the plan, and it's not only open science, it's also about gender, it's also about ethics, it's also about controlling what is called the post-truth, what is called, we are really very worried about this, how you call that, sorry, pseudoscience, which is one of the major risks today. Out of the internet, out of the social networks. That's why we create and we change in the plan. We change the level that it was commonly used in this country for this type of policies. We use the diffusion or social outreach for this other term, and we are working on that. I think by March we will have the first ethics committee for research at national level, and all the regional governments, they had been just presenting candidates. We had been discussing with them, because I think it's very important just to create this kind of committee to be in charge, and so we keep working on that area, but we need help. So.
Yeah, if I may add from my perspective, a few comments on how to move from to new models. First of all, there is this change management that is very, very important. When you change something, you really have to plan it and know that there will be moments of crisis, moments of hysteria, moments of just willing to go back, but you can't go back in halfway. So important is trust. That's really important. And trust, you build trust. But together with trust, which is from one part of the stakeholders, is credibility. Very important. You have to be credible. You can't start a change when it's not credible. So you have to be consistent and accepting also the limits of your consistent model. You have to accept that this is going to create new incentives, whatever, but very coordinated and flexible at the same time. So my suggestion from my learnings over these years is that a strategy is fundamental, and an horizon scan of where you want to go, and then perhaps reflect on on the purpose, whether you control, prestige, and regulation is really what you want to still focus on, or whether you want to move or expand the scope to other aims like improving return to society. Something more that switches the focus from this elite to a broader concept of science without penalizing the elite, I understand, or depending on what is your strategy. But I think that there is a need for a reflection that is coherent across the different levels of the states, the central government, the regional governments, the universities, all the assessments have a coherence, and then it's credible. Yeah.
Thank you, Paula.
It's very theoretical.
Yes. I forgot to add also that we are working on different evaluation criteria for projects and all the main calls that are funded by the state funding agency. So everything has been, or is being revised, looking through this kind of different lenses.
There is a intervention at the back, then another one here.
My name is Luis Anglada. I am director of the Open Science in the CSUC, and I have only two comments. The comments are to stress the importance of the information system, like, well, Clara Eugenia said. Well, we are not only having the debate here in the Faculty of the Librarianship and Documentation, but also at the same time how you insisted, well, about that below the evaluation there are indicators, but also below indicators there are data. We in the CSUC, we work in the portal, the Recerca, that has been mentioned, and one of our jobs is to join information from different CRI systems. I can assure you that this is very, very difficult. Why? Because in the past, we assumed two things that are completely wrong in this new scenario. First is that the local information is not relevant for the research, and we've been working very, very hard to introducing the data from databases, international and commercial databases. But in order to use the evaluation, in order to improve the research, we need also the local data. It's not only to evaluate, but also to know better that is happening in our institutions. And second, because we build the CRI systems thinking that the CRI systems are tools for the institution. And now the CRI systems are not only tools for the institution, but they are interoperability. So, and in the plan, in the national plan, I think I am not expert here, but I think that there are two very important things. One is this, an indicator for the open science, and also the announcement of the creation of a national information system. The second comment is about our experience with open access. We have a mandate of the open, a soft mandate, but we have a mandate in the law that show us in our experience is that to have a mandate without the tools to measure the realization of in this case of the open access is not useful. We need the mandates. Mandates are useful, but also we need incentives, and we need the tools to know if the mandate is fulfilled or not. Thank you.
We move to the next question.
Thank you. Montse Davant from the Secretariat of Universities and Research, the Catalan Ministry from Business and Knowledge. I wanted to make a couple of comments and address one request to Paula as well. First is that given the difficult situation that the Catalan government is facing now, that we have, difficult situation in terms of economy, of administration, despite all of that, we just continue having expectations on what we can do. And for example, like Martí suggested that ACU was pioneering in terms of evaluation of universities, research and teaching staff and departments. Also other agencies that are not here or not participating here like AGAUR or Recerca, that they are also evaluating in terms of quite advanced rules and goals. Most of the evaluated researchers and institutions or groups show quite a high satisfaction with the work of the agencies, which is good for, it's like a feedback for our work. But I'd like to also comment on a couple of projects we are facing now. One is also mapping a little bit, like Luis Anglada also mentioned, we try to have a broader portal on research, including the subjects seen by CSUC, like he mentioned the portal de la Recerca de las Universitats de Catalunya, and also subjects like mapping the funds received and the grants received by different groups, and this is something that comes from the Ministry of Economy, and we are participating as well as a secretariat. And also with Paula, we are very excited because, and you just mentioned that, but I'd like to because we need the implication of everybody in this hall, because it's a change of mind that we need to go to impact, which we believe strongly that this is the next step we have to take together. So maybe you want to comment a little bit on that we are working in a group, different units, to work different ministries, and to have like a Catalan, a concept on impact schools, and a community working on that. So maybe you can comment a little bit more.
I suggest that we have the last round, and then we close. So I don't know who would you like to begin, Paula?
Yeah, I should. Well, responding to Montse or Montserrat, yes, indeed. How to say it quickly. Yeah, the idea is that what we see, like doing an horizon scan, is that we really have to be ready for a new paradigm, which is being evaluated by the impact we have on society, and that's what Horizon 2020 heads to. And in Europe, this is now very strong, and in many different ways. Because not only the funders asked us this, but also society. So we decided, and this was the initiative of the Ministry of Entrepreneurship, Business and Knowledge, to create a group with all stakeholders willing to be part of it. We had the first meeting, and we had an agenda, 3-year agenda, and the idea is to move together, to be engaged all together, to be ready for a society that is prepared for impact. And so we have a 3-year agenda, and the first action will be this year, creating like this international school locally for all stakeholders to work together for 4 days or so. In discussing and engaging together in defining what is impact and how we can be prepared for this. The second is creating a tool. Creating a tool that allows us to be not only accountable, but also to learn and to share with each other, and also to be ready and competitive in international calls, Horizon 2020, the 9th framework, when we will be asked for impact. And this is what we would like in 3 years' time to be all together, have been worked on this agenda together. So many people I see here came in this first meeting, but you are all invited to join, and Montse Davant and myself will be happy to coordinate this. Okay.
It is all stakeholders, or might be a stakeholder from other parts of.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, because that
Yes.
it will be very good.
Yes.
In particular, for creating, as you say, it's very important to create capabilities for the next framework program, and to have something very specific, another experiment to offer.
Yes.
And
Okay.
I think we can.
Let's work
there
together.
are groups of people from some of the networks and so on that they might contribute.
Okay. Great.
It will be good. Very
Great.
good idea.
Yeah.
Any comments, Martí?
Sorry, do I have to do? Well, in fact, Aku is already on the group. Will participate. I just want to finish just to say that Aku is. We really believe that we are part of the system. So it's our responsibility to evaluate, but basically to improve the system. And in the specific case of research, that's very different from teaching. That we have a very strict rules from the rules from the government, let's say. On the research, everything, all the evaluations depends just of us. So the only rule is that we have to evaluate the people for being lecturer, from being professor, or from being associate professor. That's the only rule. The rest of the rules is our experts. So we are always open to include some of these issues, other issues to improve the evaluation. For instance, yesterday we were writing one letter for the people of nursing, that we have some problems with the evaluation of nursing. So it's our rules. So all the problems, they're our problems. So we have to solve it. We are open for that.
Any final comments on?
No. Thank you very much.
Okay. So before concluding, I would like to thank Ernest Abadal, the Dean of the Library of Information Sciences here, for organizing and putting all the infrastructure. And also make the announcement that the journal Biblioteconomia y Documentació, which is jointly edited by the University of Barcelona and the Open University of Catalonia, the UOC, will be publishing the proceedings of some of the presentations. And finally, I would like to finish with a personal comment. I think we are living in strange situations, not only here, but in many places in the world. And in strange situations, science plays a a special role. In the middle of World War II, the sociologist Robert Merton wrote an article suggesting that science is stronger in liberal democracies than in authoritarian states. The idea, and it is an idea that goes back to the Enlightenment, science is stronger in liberal democracies than authoritarian states. Now, in a moment in which authoritarian actions are shaping politics in many countries, and I say in many countries, let me share the belief that it is particularly appropriate and important to take some of the messages here of diversity being important in science, democratization of science being important, so that we can think of evaluation as a means not only to create better science, science of the people, for the people, but also as a way to make democracies more genuine. Thank you for the attention.